We need to deal with the root of this evil rather than the fruit of this evil. And we need to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Your vote isn't just affecting you. Your kids' kids are coming. They are going to have to deal with what we choose today.
Start praying to God for wisdom, praying to God for ways that people can start to open their eyes to really the truth that's taking place around them, because this is such a critical moment in history.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Revelation in the News. I'm Zach Drew.
And I'm Sasha Voles.
Wow, okay, so should we expect direct nuclear conflict, a war, possibly even a World War III before January 20th, before Obama officially leaves office? I think that's a great possibility. And see, here's the thing. I know a lot of people over the years have said, well, this conflict could lead to war, whether it's, on this side, political pundits or whatever is saying, hey, these set of circumstances could lead to war. Or maybe the other side are saying, hey, these set of circumstances could lead to war. But the difference this time is that it's not political pundits or just analysts of certain situations. This is an actual country. The country of Russia is preparing their citizens right now, as we actually are talking over this broadcast, for direct nuclear conflict with the United States. Now, I believe that this could possibly happen before January 20th, and if you want to get spiritual about it, which we are going to, and we're going to address this later on in the show, I wouldn't be a lick surprised if this conflict takes place in direct correlation to what we decide to do with Israel before January 20th.
Yeah, and it's an amazing thing because we've watched it throughout history. We watched it even in our recent history of any time we've attacked Israel or we decided that we're going to divide some of their land, we've seen the repercussions here in America. We've seen it worldwide. And now we're facing this fact that we may be dividing Israel again, and that's where we're kind of worried because this could step us into a whole new realm of disaster.
And the thing is that I am a patriot, okay? I'm a nationalist. I love America, but you've got to also be intelligent whenever you look at these situations, because a lot of times we can be so skewed with our nationalism or our hardcore patriotism that we think, well, if we get in a war, we're just going to whoop whoever's there. We still are coming out of this World War II mentality of, hey, the whole world comes against us, America will prevail. And you know what? We might be more intelligent than Russia. And our government is surely far supreme than theirs. But the thing is this, Russia has more nukes than the United States has.
Yeah.
Russia has better missiles than the United States has. And they have far better technology. And especially just since Obama went into office, we have disarmed, are you ready for this? 95% of our nuclear arsenal. 95%. So the bottom line is this. Let's say I'm getting in a fight with somebody, and that other person might be 5 times smarter than me, and they have a knife, and I have a gun. Who's going to win? I am. Even though that other person might be 5 times smarter than I am and have a better, government, if you will, I have more power. I have more weapons. Yeah. They have more nukes, better missiles, and they're far more advanced than us in technology. And they are preparing right now for a nuclear conflict with the West.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It really is. Watching it right now, it's crazy to think that the media has painted Putin as this warmonger, hateful person that's crazy. It's a horrible guy that's out in Russia. But right now, we're looking at it. He may be a bad guy, but he's the guy with the gun right now. He is the one, sure. As we've disarmed in the past years in this administration, we've seen ourselves disarm ourselves 95%.
Yeah.
Yet, they are ramping up. They're getting ready. They're warning their people, their own citizens, to get ready for this, come back to their homeland and get ready for this. This is something we're going to go into in the show. But watching this right now, as much as we've painted him to be the bad guy in Russia, he is the guy with the gun right now. And that's what we need to be prepared for.
And I want to take a different spin on that because I believe that once again, the media has portrayed Putin as a particular, in a particular light, and a lot of it is true. But I think that it's more than just the bad guy holding the gun, Sasha. I honestly believe that he thinks this is almost like a moral war.
Yeah.
A moral war. We think that as Americans, we are far more religious and superior than every other nation, which to some degree, I do believe that. But I think that Putin knows that he's fighting somewhat of a religious war. You've got to put yourself in the shoes of those individuals in Russia. Okay, they have completely outlawed, and it's completely illegal, pornography in all of Russia. And yet the largest dispenser, if you will, of pornography in all of the world is America. And the Russians know that. Putin knows that. And he is not happy about that. In the same way, they do not look in a positive manner of homosexual relationships and marriage, and they know that the West, the United States of America, has completely legalized it, and they have made it illegal. So the very sinful things that we have made legal, they have made illegal. So it's not just the bad guy has the guns. He thinks this is almost kind of a holy war in a sense too. And he thinks, we're not going to really get into this as much, but about 1,000 years ago, another guy named Putin was the leader of Russia, and he's actually the one that made Russia more of Orthodox Catholicism. And Putin, in the back of his mind, he thinks, hey, it's part of my job to restore that and to get rid of some of this evil in the world. So that's another take on what's taking place in Russia. But like I said, they have more nukes. They have better missiles. They have they're far advanced than us in technology. Because at one point in time, we were the leader. We had by far the best of everything and the most of everything, but not anymore. I hate to say it. Like I said, I'm a patriot. I'm a nationalist, but it's just the hard truth that we're going to have to deal with. And this country that has more than us and is more advanced than us with technology as far as warfare goes, they're preparing for war. And let me just read some of these things for you as far as their submarines and rockets go, just so you understand this. The submarines. The Russians have submarines that are so quiet that the U.S. military cannot detect them. They already have them. They're called black hole submarines, and they can freely approach the coastlines of the United States without fear of being detected whenever they want. How about the rockets? The Russians have developed a brand new intercontinental ballistic missile known as the Sarmat that is far more advanced than anything that the U.S. currently has. Think about that. The Russians. According to National Interest, the Sarmat will weigh at least 100 tons and carry a 10-ton payload. That means the missile could carry as many as, here, are you ready for this? 15 independently targeted thermonuclear warheads. In this one intercontinental ballistic missile, 14 nuclear warheads is attached to it. Now, here's what's so crazy. It has a range of 6,000 miles, and it is also the largest intercontinental ballistic missile ever built. And like other modern Russian ICBMs, such as the Yars, the Tupolev, and the Bulava, the Sarmat is being designed specifically to overcome ballistic missile defenses using a combination of decoys, a host of countermeasures, and sheer speed. Well, hey, we'll be okay. Maybe they have these submarines that will shoot off these intercontinental ballistic missiles, right off all the coastlines. But hey, our defense missiles, our systems will knock it out of the sky. No, not with what Russia has. It's built strategically once again, I'm going to read it. Designed specifically to overcome ballistic missile defenses, using a combination of decoys, a host of countermeasures, and sheer speed. It might also be equipped with maneuvering warheads, which would make it even more difficult to intercept. And all while, the Daily Beast says, while the U.S. military has been steadily cutting the number of nukes it loads onto submarines and bombers in the missile silos, Russian forces have been adding more. I'm going to repeat this one more time. Russians have more nukes, better missiles, and they're more advanced than us with technology when it comes to warfare. And they are preparing for war. Let's read some of the headlines of what's taking place right now in Russia.
Yes, and as Zach was saying, right now they really are preparing for war. And even with this headline, I was actually shocked to even read it. It says Russian government officials told to immediately bring back children studying abroad. It says in Europe, as it gets serious, you have to lie. But in Russia, however, when it gets serious, attention immediately turns to the children.
Wow.
A recent report from Russia published this week said Russian state officials and government workers were told to bring back their children studying abroad immediately, even if it means cutting their education short and not waiting to the end of the school year and then re-enrolling them in Russian schools. The article adds that if the parents of these same individuals also live abroad for some reason and have not lost their Russian citizenship, they should also return home to the motherland.
Wow.
Why are they asking their people, why are they asking their citizens to come back, whether they have their own lives in another country, whether they're studying abroad as children? They're asking these individuals to come back home. That in itself is a sign, a clear sign that they are preparing. And we as Americans, we have to take this seriously and say, that it's not just a bad guy. It's not just some country that's making threats anymore. This is a national issue in their country that they're bringing their people home. And we in America need to wake up to this warning.
Yeah, and so right now, as everybody knows, it's all about Donald and Hillary and Hillary and Donald and Donald and Hillary. And,
Yes.
and this is pressing news right now. Like you said, Sasha, when things get serious in Russia, history shows that the Russians always immediately turn to the children for safety, and they're calling all the children. Russia orders all the officials to fly back home, any relatives living abroad, as tensions mount over the prospect of global war. This is what they're doing. Can you imagine the President of the United States saying, listen, there's a chance for global war. Anybody who's living abroad, anybody who's studying abroad, anybody who's currently out of the country, you need to get back here immediately.
Drop everything you're doing and come back to our
Yes.
nation right now. Imagine that in America. That would be an uproar. But this is what's happening right now in Russia.
Another article here. This is from The Sun. It says Russia, this was as of last week, Russia holds massive nuclear war exercise involving 40 million people as military tensions rise with the U.S. I can't figure out a way to display how serious this is. So right now, we have 40 million Russians that are preparing for, once again, direct nuclear conflict. And you think to yourself, well, Russia is absolutely huge. There's, their population is far significant, more, they're more populated than the United States. Not true. Russia has about 145 to 150 million residents in all of Russia. So they have less than half of the population than the United States has at about 330 million. But yet, even though they have about 140 to 150 million residents, 40 million of them are preparing for a nuclear event right now. Can you imagine that? So can you imagine a third of all of Americans, over 100 million Americans, preparing, taking part in drills, thinking, hey, a nuclear event could happen at any moment? Let's read this article. Russia is holding a massive evacuation drill for more than 40 million people to prepare for nuclear war. More than 200,000 emergency services personnel and soldiers will use 50,000 pieces of equipment during this massive civil defense exercise. The former Soviet nation is ramping up fears over nuclear war and blaming the West for the unsettling possibility of a conflict. As international tension builds following attacks in Syria, Russia's state officials are preparing terrified citizens for a nuclear war, which they say could be started by America.
Well, and just to even back that up, this is just one more article stating Russia state newspapers predict direct military conflict with U.S. as it compares Syria's stalemate to Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
Right now, it says the Third World War fears have been voiced by the newspaper over the growing tensions between USA and Syria. Tabloid predicts a direct military confrontation on par with Cuban Missile Crisis. But right now, we just have to look at it and say, this is what's happening. There's no way around this. If we want to believe that we can still have our nationalism and say, yes, America is great, we need to make America great again. But at the same time, we need to look at these issues and not just get so caught up in all the media right now stirring us up about the election, stirring us up about social issues in America, but we have to look at these global issues and say, this is real. This is happening. Russia is getting ready. The world is seeing this, but we have to open our eyes to the reality.
And this is all taking place because Washington stopped the diplomatic dialogue between Moscow, and they're disagreeing with what's taking place in Syria, and we've completely cut all talks. So we haven't been in a situation like this since the end of the Cold War, and that's why even Putin ally, so a friend of Vladimir Putin and an ally, he tells Americans this: vote Trump or face nuclear war. It says Americans should vote for Donald Trump as president next month or risk being dragged into a nuclear war, according to a Russian ultranationalist ally of President Vladimir Putin. Now, this guy's name, who's Vladimir Zhiranovsky, told Reuters in an interview that Trump was the only person able to de-escalate dangerous tensions between Moscow and Washington. And by contrast, Trump's Democratic rival Hillary Clinton could spark World War III, he said. He also went on to say relations between Russia and the United States can't get any worse. The only way they can get worse is if war starts. Americans voting for a president on November 8th must realize that they are voting for peace on planet Earth if they vote for Donald Trump. Now, obviously, I don't think that peace is going to be completely achieved, but there's still truth to that statement. Mm-hmm. But if they vote for Hillary, it's war. It will be a short movie. There will be Hiroshimas and Nagasaki's everywhere. So he's saying, listen, you have a choice. And if you vote Trump, you can face nuclear war. Because he's basically saying, listen, Hillary Clinton is not going to resume the dialogue between our two countries. Right. And Trump is the only one that he believes is going to resume those dialogues so that peace can be achieved. And now here's another article. Once again, you don't hear about this on mainstream media sources right now, but yet it's all over the place. It's all over the place. World War III, ? Barack Obama could take a major step toward war with Russia this week, on Friday actually. Because the mainstream media is devoting almost all of their time and energy to covering the Trump and Clinton campaigns, most Americans don't realize that the Obama administration is bringing us perilously close to war with Russia. Barack Obama is going to sit down with his foreign policy team and discuss military options in Syria. So it's all about Syria. Russia has already pledged, you got to understand this, Russia has already pledged to respond to anything military to any direct strikes on Syrian forces. You strike Syrian forces, we will take that as you are attacking us, Russia is saying. And so the decisions that Barack Obama makes regarding Syria could literally spark what sets off World War III. The daily drama surrounding Trump and Clinton is far less important than a potential war with Russia. And if Barack Obama decides to directly hit the Syrian military, that will be crossing a red line that Russia has already established. And unlike Obama, Russia actually takes their red lines deadly serious. The Russians recently deployed an additional S-300 and S-400 air defense systems to Syria, and they have warned that any strike against Syrian forces would put Russian personnel in danger. Wow.
And just bringing it back home one more time, I have another article right here that says, in Russia, there is talk that a war with the United States is inevitable. Feverishly preparing to win such a war when it happens. It says, in fact, one false move could result in U.S. and Russian forces shooting at each other. The Russians have worked incredibly hard to upgrade and modernize their military in recent years. But meanwhile, the United States military is being transformed into radically politically correct a social experiment by the Obama administration. Most Americans simply assume that they will never have to fight a war with Russia, and that if for some reason that we did, we would win easily. Unfortunately, things have changed dramatically over the past decade, and the truth is that Russians now have the upper hand. Most Americans are accustomed to thinking that we have such an overwhelming strategic nuclear arsenal that nobody would ever dare mess with us. At one time, that was true, but now it isn't. And the fact is, the United States' strategic nuclear arsenal has been reduced more than 95% since the end of the Cold War, and now the Russians actually have more deployed nuclear warheads than we do.
Wow.
At the end of the day, we cannot have this arrogance in our head anymore, saying that whoever comes up against us, we're the greatest nation. Yes, we are, but at the same time, not, as this article continues to just tell us, we do not have the upper hand anymore. They have the nuclear devices to take us out now. And we have to say that they are getting ready, and we have to make sure that we prepare our hearts, our minds for this, and actually make it a reality that this is happening, and we cannot continue to ignore it and get so caught up in American political issues, American social issues, that we do not see the bigger picture, because we will be blindsided as American citizens. Because where else are you seeing this news? Where else are they talking that Russia is gearing up for war with us? Not some other country, but with the United States of America. This is mainstream news that needs to be on mainstream channels, but where is this? There's no talk of it. So right now, as you're watching this, make sure that you know, make sure you start preparing yourself and start watching the news, start getting into the news, start researching it for yourself, because this is a reality that's taking place in our world right now.
So let's connect some of these dots here. When should we expect a direct nuclear conflict with Russia? Well, if it does happen, I'm not prophesying. I don't never claim to be a prophet, but my prediction is that if it did happen, it'd be sometime before January 20th. Before whoever gets elected, whether it's Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, it'd be before January 20th. And I would connect it to a spiritual event, and that would be, once again, dividing the land of Israel.
Yeah.
We have not heard about this from mainstream news outlets in America, but mainstream news outlets in many other countries, this has been heavily in the news that Barack Obama is going to put it on the table, a UN resolution that would divide Israel once again, more specifically Jerusalem, and for peace. Every president tries to do something with Israel to leave a legacy. And that's why they're scared right now of what in the world is Obama trying to do. Actually, Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, recently talked to John Kerry, and he said Netanyahu asks Kerry not to promote anti-Israel resolutions. And and I'm going to read this article, but they're all fearful it's going to come before January 20th. It says, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry that Israel would expect that the Obama administration will not carry out a shift in policy and will not promote or support a United Nations Security Council resolution on the Israeli-Palestine issue during the period following the U.S. presidential election until Obama leaves office. So from November 8th to January 20th. We have Benjamin Netanyahu asking John Kerry, listen, Obama is not going to try to push this through before January 20th, is he? And the election is to be held on November 8th, while Obama's term does not end until January 20th. A senior Israeli official who asked not to be named due to sensitivity of the matter told Haaretz News that in the call, Netanyahu presented Kerry with Israel's position on the matter and repeated the points that he, Netanyahu, had presented publicly about 2 weeks ago in a speech to the UN General Assembly. Haaretz has learned that in the portion of the call devoted to possible steps at the UN Security Council, for the most part, Kerry listened, but ultimately, he told Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the U.S. administration has still not made any decision on the issue. Palestinian Authority officials have expressed hope that Obama, freed from re-election concerns, would break with American protocol and refrain from vetoing any resolutions put to a vote before he leaves office. Officials in the Prime Minister's office and at the Foreign Ministry are concerned that following the president's elections prior, but the end of his term in the White House, Obama could attempt to promote steps to enshrine his presidential legacy on the Israeli-Palestinian issue, noted Haaretz. Now, we know that this, if it does take place, what happens every time that we pressure Israel, what happens? It's outlined in the book Eye to Eye by White House correspondent William Koenig. And it says, what do these major record-setting events have in common? The 10 costliest insurance events in U.S. history, the 12 costliest hurricanes, the 3 of the 4 largest tornado outbreaks in U.S. history, the 2 largest terrorism events in U.S. history. It's all come within 24 hours of us pressuring Israel to divide its land. Now, what's crazy is this. The amount of pressure that we put on Israel to do this is in relation to the catastrophe that we experience in America. Now, if this takes place before January 20th, America has never, ever done anything to this caliber to hurt Israel. So therefore, we should expect a catastrophe like never before. Is that World War III? Is that Russia?
Wow.
I don't know. But what I do know is that once again, it would have to take place before January 20th. Because why? Well, you have Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. We know that neither of them are going to do it. Well, why not Hillary Clinton? Because she, as we know, she needs the Jewish vote. She needs it. She can't, say that she's not going to do it and then, backstab the Jewish people. So she needs the Jewish vote.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is not going to do it because we know exactly where he stands on the issue of Israel. Now, I want to read something for you, just to further illustrate where Donald Trump, we were talking about this recently.
Yeah.
And it's it's awesome. It really is. It's really awesome. I was reading through the Republican platform of 2016 of exactly the planks of what the Republican platform is going to do if Donald Trump is elected. And I really encourage you to go through it. And it talks about every incredible issue that we need to know about: religious liberty, guns, abortion, marriage, Common Core, the internet, immigration, the power grid, the refugee crisis. And as you see, I went through it. I've dissected it, have my little notes here. But I want to read. This is incredible. What Donald Trump and the Republican platform of 2016 put together, and what they said about Israel. In writing, it says this about Israel: we recognize Jerusalem as the eternal, wow, look at that word. We recognize Jerusalem as the eternal and indivisible capital of the Jewish state, and call for the American embassy to be moved there in fulfillment of U.S. law. We reject the false notion that Israel is an occupier and specifically recognize that the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement is anti-Semitic in nature and seeks to destroy Israel. Therefore, we call for effective legislation to thwart actions that are intended to limit commercial relations with Israel or persons or entities doing business in Israel or in Israeli-controlled territories in a discriminatory manner. We oppose any measures intended to impose an agreement or to dictate borders or other terms, and we call for the immediate termination of all U.S. funding of an entity that attempts to do so. So he's saying, listen, there's not going to be any peace talks between us. We recognize the Jewish state as the eternal capital of Israel. And he even says, our party is proud to stand with Israel now and always. So once again,
amazing.
Yes, there we go.
That is truly amazing to have that in writing and to actually hear that. That is one of the greatest things, because at the end of the day, that is what it's all about. We do this for Israel. Israel is the eternal. That is the most important thing about everything. And one last article real quickly, just because as we're talking about this, we've talked about Obama, we've talked about just where he's going. And right now I have an article from the Israeli National News, and it says, the New York Times has demanded that U.S. President Barack Obama use his last months in office to hit Israel hard. It says, apparently in his response to the fact that Israeli government has approved the construction of a new Jewish settlement in the West Bank, which is simply another step to steady the march under Prime Minister Netanyahu to build on land needed to create a Palestinian state. It says, the article written in the New York Times, the best idea under the discussion now would be to have the United Nations Security Council in an official resolution lay down guidelines for a peace agreement covering such issues such as Israel's security and the future of Jerusalem, the fate of the Palestinian refugees, and the border for both states. But this is where we're going to, and we have to pray against this. We have to pray that no matter what, we will honor Israel, and that the United States president right now, Barack Obama, will not do anything before January 20th to divide the land even more, because we will see the repercussions of it.
And that's right. We'll see the repercussions because the fate of America hangs in the balance with what that decision is going to be before January 20th. So Russia in the news, UN resolution in the news. You need to stay tuned in and have your ear to the ground of what's really happening in the world. And that's why we want to be one of your homes for alternative news. Well, this has been Revelation in the News, and we'll see you next week.